Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if our emotions are more like a roller coaster or a calm lake? Well, this new research dives deep into that very idea. The big question here is, how can we understand our emotions not just as one-time feelings, but as a continuous, flowing journey? For a long time, science has tried to put emotions into neat little boxes like happy or sad. But what if emotions are more like a dance, constantly changing and adapting? That is what this paper is all about. Think about those apps that try to tell if you are happy based on your voice or face. That is called affective computing, and it has gotten pretty good at recognizing an emotion in a specific moment. But most of that research happens in labs under very controlled conditions. Imagine trying to understand a whole conversation by only looking at one single word. That is kind of what the old way of doing emotion recognition was like. These researchers are proposing a new way. Instead of just labeling an emotion, they want to model the dynamics of our emotions. They want to see how emotions change over time, like watching a movie of your emotional life. Not just a single snapshot, they imagine using data from wearable devices like smartwatches to track our feelings. So, how does this work? They suggest looking at our body signals, things like heart rate, how much we sweat, or our skin temperature, which are collected by smartwatches and fitness trackers. These signals can give clues about our emotional state. They can then map these feelings onto a kind of emotional map called the Arousal-Valence Space. Arousal is like how energized or calm you feel, and valence is whether that feeling is pleasant or unpleasant. So you could be high arousal and pleasant, like excited for a party, or low arousal and unpleasant, like feeling bored and sad. This is where it gets really interesting. They propose that by tracking these emotional journeys over time, we can map out something called an emotional landscape for each person. Imagine this landscape like a hilly terrain. The valleys in this landscape are like comfortable, stable emotional states that we tend to return to. The hills are like challenging or unstable emotional states that are harder to stay in. The shape of this landscape, they believe, is like our emotional temperament. It influences how easily we move between emotions, how quickly we recover from upset, and how vulnerable we are to getting stuck in negative states. So, how do we get there? It is a journey in stages first. They need to build general models from lots of people where emotions are labeled really precisely, moment by moment. Then they take these general models and test them out in the real world where life is messy and unpredictable. The key here is personalization, because everyone's emotional landscape is different. These general models need to be fine, tuned for each individual. And these simulations should be understood as conceptual demonstrations rather than as empirically validated models of human emotional dynamics. And the researchers use computer simulations to show what these emotional landscapes might look like. Imagine a hilly map panel. One shows a baseline. There a nice deep valley in the middle, representing a comfortable, calm state. There also a smaller, deeper pit-off to one side, representing a tough, upsetting state. The simulation shows how different triggers, like a distressing event or a joyful one, can push our emotional state around this map. Panel 2 shows what happens when someone gets better at managing their emotions, maybe through therapy or practice. The comfy valley gets deeper and more stable, and that nasty pit becomes less of a trap. This means that even if something upsetting happens, it is harder to get stuck there. Panel 3 shows the opposite. After a really bad experience, the comfy valley might shrink, and that negative pit could get deeper and more powerful. This would make someone much more likely to get stuck in a distressed state. It is important to remember, as the paper states, that these are conceptual ideas to illustrate the possibilities, not hard facts about how everyone's emotions work just yet. What could this all mean for us? The potential applications are huge. Imagine having a clearer picture of your own emotional patterns. This could lead to better emotional self-awareness, helping you understand what triggers certain feelings. It could also be a powerful tool for therapists, giving them a dynamic view of a patient's emotional life, not just what they report in a session. This research could even help us understand how our emotions connect with others. If we could track emotions for multiple people in a social group, we could see how they influence each other, how we synchronize our feelings, and how that impacts relationships. But with all this power comes responsibility. The paper doesn't shy away from the ethical challenges. There are big questions about privacy. Who owns this deeply personal emotional data? How do we protect it from being misused? Another major concern is that we might start treating the app's predictions as absolute truth. If a smartwatch says you are stressed, does that mean you are stressed, even if you don't feel it? The paper warns against oversimplifying our emotional lives and relying too much on algorithmic interpretation. And, of course, like many technologies, there is the risk of unequal performance. If these systems work better for some groups of people than others, it could widen existing inequalities. So, what is the takeaway message? This paper is a call to shift our thinking about emotions. Instead of just trying to label them, we need to understand them as dynamic, flowing processes, unique to each person. By using wearable technology and fancy modeling, we can begin to map out our individual emotional landscapes, understand our temperaments, and potentially even find new ways to improve our mental wealth. It's a complex vision, and there are many technical and ethical hurdles to overcome. But it offers a fascinating glimpse into a future where we have a deeper, more dynamic understanding of our own emotional lives. What do you all think? Does the idea of an emotional landscape make sense to you? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology. And as always, stay curious.